from one generation to another. It seems like there's some sort of war or conflict between two or more countries. In the past century, there has been a lot of events that included conflict. The Vietnam War, two world wars, a Cold War to which almost ended with a Third World War, with the use of nuclear weapons, which could have concluded to a downfall of two powerful nations and death of millions of innocent lives. Today we hear from someone who has lived through some conflicts in his life. He will explain some of the changes that he has seen through his life, talk about aviation, a huge part of his life, as he was a pilot for more than half of his lifetime.
My name is Dave Ogden. Recently retired from Hewlett-Packard Corporation after 31 years as pilot in their corporate flight department. After taking a few years off and enjoy retirement, I decided to start a company, a consulting company called Air Safety Concepts, where I will be teaching safety management practices to young pilots as they get started in their flying career. So I'm looking forward to, in my later years, being able to pass on things I've learned and gained through my experience in aviation. All right. In terms of changes over time, technology has been I think, the most important change from days when I was in my late teens, and we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have computers, so when we were in automobiles and driving, we were pretty much out of touch. One of the things that are of the past are phone credit cards. We always had to have a phone credit card, so we went to a payphone and we had to input the phone number and then input the phone credit card number to make a call. Today, you know, pay phones, and they're very rare. In my profession, I was always interested in aviation. I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I was on a commercial flight, actually a United Airlines flight, and the pilots back then, they came back and then sometimes invited children up to the flight deck. So about 7 or 8, the pilot came back and asked my mom if I could go up front, and I spent about 2 hours on a flight from Oakland to New York, and that is when I knew that I wanted to have something to do with aviation. So at the age of 15, I started working at the Oakland Airport, and I was loading baggage on airplanes, cleaning airplanes, vacuuming airplanes, and of course back then the majority of the people seemed to smoke, so we had a lot of cigarette butts that had to be taken out of the armrests that were in airplanes. And of course the younger generations now, there aren't even ashtrays in the airplanes. So in doing that, I enjoyed being around the airplanes, and actually took flying lessons. So in my senior year in high school, I got my pilot's license, and then it wasn't shortly after that. It was shortly after that that I went into the military, and I hadn't procured a college degree at that time. Vietnam War was prevalent, and people were being drafted, but I went into the Air Force, but not as a pilot. And it was when I was discharged from the Air Force that I continued my flying license. I became a flight instructor, and that's how I was able to build my flight time, by instructing. When I was able to gain enough flight experience, I began flying charter and flying cargo flights at night, and then went on to become a chief pilot So as you gain flight experience, then you become qualified for other positions, such as chief pilot. And then it wasn't long, probably another year, I went to work for a corporation, small company. It was an air conditioning company in Livermore. And then from there I was hired by Hewlett-Packard Corporation, and they had a flight department, and all the planes were based at San Jose. And I stayed with Hewlett-Packard for 31 years and retired as a corporate pilot. And now I am have started a consulting business called Air Safety Concepts, and would like to be mentoring the younger pilots and giving them and teaching some of the benefits and teaching them from the experiences that I've gained over the 30+ years in aviation. And of course, technology has changed, not only with cell phones and automatic teller machines, but in aviation as well. Because of the space program, GPS was originally used in the space program, and that has filtered down to commercial aviation and general aviation, which makes really makes navigating and flying from point A to point B very knowing your position immediately is quite an advantage. And years ago we didn't have that advantage. We had to do some cross-checking. Well, my parents were young. They were very young during the Depression time. So as young children, they didn't really feel the effects of the Depression era or World War II. For example, my father, when he joined the Navy in his late teens, I believe he was 18 or 19 years old, World War II had already ended. So they benefited, my parents benefited from the coming out of the Depression and basically the rise and the success that the improving economy had for them. And then I think my generation, we're known as the baby boomers, and we really reaped the benefits of a strong economy and technology. So with my parents, they were at the very beginning of a start of a good economy, owning their own home. A lot of people that were my parents' age were able to go out and afford homes out in the suburban, and that's when the suburbia became popular. All the houses and growth began. Well, let me see. Well, my career. We've gone over my career, and my parents coming out of being young, very young, out of the Depression era. The Vietnam War. It seems each generation has some kind of war that is taking place. My parents were able to go and live through the Cold War. When I was in school, we used to have drills as though a nuclear bomb was being dropped, and we had to get under the desk, close the curtains in the classroom, and this was in preparation of a nuclear attack because we were in a Cold War with Russia. I remember that growing up and being in school, that the threat of a nuclear attack. Yes. Then the Vietnam War came in, and there was a lot of opposition. That's when demonstrations became very prevalent at Berkeley University, and people were becoming very vocal about the disagreement with the government's decision to be in Vietnam. I joined the Air Force during the Vietnam War, and I was fortunate that I actually, for my overseas duty, I was actually in Thailand for a year, so I didn't actually serve in the country of Vietnam. And your generation, you're looking at Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah.
Seems like each generation has some war that
North
going on.
Korea.
North
China.
Korea, yes. Yeah. Now your generation is looking at the proliferation of nuclear weapons. You know, it's funny, 30, 40 years go through a cycle, and things come back. But hopefully this will all be taken care of.
Yeah.
Right?